it became the pursuit of excellence around articulation. A lot of people teach it as a value proposition. I've always taught it as a unique value proposition. Did you actually do what you said you could do? Did your proposition become real? You yourselves as a leadership team need to define what makes your story clear, compelling, memorable. And it needs to start in your boardroom and to filter it down to that person that's literally representing your brand. And we got to protect their entrepreneurial spirit. You want to live your legacy, not just leave it. Here's what I've learned, because the universe is big enough for both of us. I can promise you that.
Welcome to the Differentiation podcast. My name is Michèle Sorgaroli. I'm your host. And today we have the distinct pleasure of being joined by Leo Pusateri. Now, Leo is affectionately known as the value man in financial services and is the founder and CEO of Pusateri Consulting. Through his proprietary programs delivered across the globe, he has inspired leaders and teams to know, price, sell, and live their value. As you're about to discover, Leo's passion never sleeps. And whether he is driving expansion, writing books, or designing new programs, he is an authentic role model and a devoted family man who is absolutely intent on living a life of real significance. Leo, I'm just delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michèle. What a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Likewise, this is going to be so much fun. So what I want to do, I want to take you back to 1977 when you graduated, right? So you graduated from university. You had a business degree with a specialization in marketing. Is that right?
Marketing and a minor in education, because I thought I was going to teach and coach. That's why I wanted to be a Division I basketball coach. And here we are.
Gosh. And here we are. You're still teaching and coaching, right? Interesting. In business. Good. It's a good blend there for you. Okay. So you graduated from university and then you were a sales manager in distribution of business products. And then from there, you became a regional manager in relationships for Xerox, I understand. And then you were a VP sales and marketing for asset management firm. And then in 1992, you founded Pusateri Consulting. So I would love for you to help us understand your journey from business products to relationship manager for Xerox to then asset management. And here we are today.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a path forward from
there. My gosh, you're really aging me now, Michèle.
It's okay. We get to have fun. To see the path.
1977.
1977.
I was graduating from St. Bonaventure University.
Yeah.
And I was in love with my wife, who was a year behind me. So I moved to beautiful Buffalo from south of Buffalo at the university. And I started this career, and it was in office products. It was linear business products. We were a distributor. And literally $700 a month, accountable draw, and $100 a month for expenses. I got a territory in the suburbs of beautiful Buffalo, and I started knocking on doors and literally cold calling with no clients per se, and started my career just literally learning the business of sales. I wanted to coach, and I had this intensity around self-development, being my best, challenging other people to be their best. That was a 3-year cycle from a salesperson to a sales manager. Going to a sales school every year down in Atlanta, basic selling, advanced selling, sales management techniques. And I find out that there's division. It's important when you say Xerox, because Xerox is so big at the time. But I was in this small division called the Xerox Learning Systems. It was arguably the finest sales productivity company in the world. I mean, we were tough out.
They had a reputation for excellent training at that time. I remember that.
I tell that story because that was a 9-year part of my career, my formative years, 25 years old to 34 years old, where I felt like I got my doctorate in selling, in relationship management and consultative techniques and differentiation. And that formed the basis that built on my intensity around coaching and wanting to be someone that could challenge people to be their best and all that good stuff. So I was going through all these programs, Michèle, face-to-face selling, advanced selling, strategic selling, time and territory, listening, closing, self-leadership, presentation techniques. competing against the competition. I'm going through them as a participant, but then
Yeah.
eventually learning how to teach them,
Yeah.
right? So I'm in front of Fortune 500 firms, the Xeroxes and Kodaks and Bristol Myers and Carriers and Corning Glassworks and Fisher Price Toys back when they were, you know,
Yeah.
companies like that, Bosch and Lomb, firms like that. I was calling on the folks that were national sales leaders, VPs of sales, sales training leaders, whatever, in designing many times customized curriculum to teach their sales force. So I was loving this. It was a great time of my life. I loved every minute of this. I was surrounded by some amazing friends that to this day are some of my closest friends in my life that we worked together way back in the 80s. And then a light bulb hit me. And it was a moment where a gentleman I ran into at the Syracuse airport when I was on sales calls one day, and was a good friend of mine I knew from his wife, David Elias. David owned Elias Asset Management in beautiful Buffalo, an entrepreneur himself, very much like my upbringing. Fathers grew up outside of Rochester, New York, janitors. I mean, we just
Oh.
had a life of learning core values of accountability, showing up on time,
As
discipline.
young people through your
It's
family.
young people, and people ask me, where did this all start? I said,
Hmm.
32 Wadsworth Avenue. And they look at me, so what do you mean? I said, that's where I grew up. That was my house. With my mother and father coming home from school and seeing him working two jobs and my mother on a assembly line at General Foods making Cool Whip. And I said, that's how I grew up. A
Yeah.
Sicilian immigrant that he came
Oh.
over as a 9-year-old in 1924 with no money in the seventh grade education. So you can
Right.
imagine the day, one of the most proudest moments in my life,
Oh.
when I decided to, after 3 years of working with David in helping him to grow his money management firm, he wanted to be $1 billion player way back then.
Hmm.
$250,000 clients back in the late 80s. It was a lot of money back then. Now it's
Hmm.
maybe $1 million.
Hmm.
But you can imagine the day that I went and I gave a business card to my father. And I'm Leo Jr. And here's my dad, right? Sicilian immigrant, seventh grade education, a laborer in a dirty, dusty plant outside of Rochester, New York, in a small town.
Yeah.
Coming home, half-hour nap. Mom made dinner. He's off to the local bank as a janitor for 25 or so years. And I gave him a business card that said Leo Pusateri, President. The Pusateri Consulting. When I started my company, May 27th, 1992, right? And the look on his face is like,
Yeah.
that is the, I'm getting goosebumps telling you
I
this.
I just got goosebumps as well.
Because people said,
Yeah.
what is, and I created one of the words in their questions in my program is like, what's been your best moment?
Yeah.
I said, no, you got a lot of great moments. When I
Yeah.
wrote my first book and I opened it up, it's like my fifth kid, or, when I cracked the code and we closed our first $1 million client, or,
Yeah.
all these things in my business life, accomplishments, Michelle. But I said,
Mm.
my best moment realized when I went to the cemetery one day in my hometown and I kneeled and prayed at my mom and dad's gravesite. And it's on the
Mm.
gravesite, Michelle, it said Leo Pusateri. And I'm
Mm.
there thinking of, that's me, that's my name.
Mhm.
I'm this guy, and
Mhm.
I just was there. And that moment reminded me of when I gave the card to my dad.
Mhm.
And I said, that's quite honestly been the best moment of the pride of seeing him with a seventh grade education, seeing me giving him a business card. And the old Italian Sicilians, Michelle, they would, when the aunts and uncles would show up back then, they would just show up. They wouldn't call to say, what are you doing? Do you mind? They would just, the door
Yeah.
was always open, Michelle. They would
Yeah.
just show up, right? And it was like, how's little Leo? I was like in my 30s, I'm
Yeah.
37 years old. I started my company. How's little Leo? I never left being little Leo, right?
Yeah.
Leo
Oh my
Jr.
gosh.
And he'd point to the card, and my mother would say,
Yeah.
start his own company.
Oh.
And that moment of seeing his own name on the card, and the end of the
Mm.
story is when my dad passed shortly 3 months after I started my company.
Oh my
Suddenly,
gosh. Yeah.
I put that card. I had shirts made up with a Pusateri logo for my company, and I wrote a note to him to thank him,
Hmm.
tell him I loved him, I always remember. And I put that card that he had showing my aunts and uncles. And that was the last thing I did. Gave him a kiss and closed the casket. And that was the story.
Mm, yeah. So
That's who I
touching.
am. That's who I am.
I
So I
hear
think
it.
a lot of it, when you try to tell people in the world of wealth and they're all about money and I'm all about values. I said I grew up on
Hmm.
values. I grew up on
Hmm.
money
Exactly.
and
We
I
can
grew
hear
up
that.
on how to treat people correctly,
Mm. Well,
appropriately,
the open door.
respectfully. That's how I
Hmm.
live my values, respectfully,
Hmm. Hmm.
caring for others. Never
Mm.
lost sight of please and thank you. And what can I do to make a difference? And the little
Yes.
things that make it, one of the authors said, little people don't remember what you did until they know that you care, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just
Exactly.
proud that I built a business around core values, and caring was one that one of my clients in Toronto said to me one day, you left one out. After he heard me talking in a session, passion, commitment, trust, respect, value. And he
Hmm.
said, you left one out walking to the men's room during a break. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, you
Mm.
care.
Yeah.
He said, you
Yeah.
care about your clients. You care about us. That's why we hire you, Leo.
Yeah.
And so I try to teach that, Michèle, the best I can, that what do you stand for? What can people expect from you
Hmm.
beyond the great curriculum or the coaching you do, or how you manage money or help people achieve their family wealth mandates, whatever they might be? What the heck do you stand for? And
Right.
how do you become an adjunct member of this individual's family? Or do
Yeah.
you want it? Do you even want it? Some people don't.
Some people don't. That's
They
true.
don't want, they don't want, Michèle, they just want to be transactional. They want to get
Yeah.
paid and they want to make a lot of money. That's not how I built my
You
career.
know, that's an interesting statement because I think to a large degree that is true on the surface, but I think you share this belief, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. I believe that everybody wants to make a difference. Everybody wants to be significant and make a meaningful impact and touch people's lives. I think when we find ourselves in that transactional place, when some people are there, they're just caught up inside of their professional mask or other issues that are getting in the way of their ability to access that and bring it to life.
Mm,
That's what I believe. I don't, I, I just feel that nobody's transactional. I mean, nobody is born transactional. We're not like that as children, right? We're never transactional. We're all about connectivity and having friends and connecting with people and hugs, and even the littlest children are like that. So it's an interesting statement
yeah.
because I think you're touching on something really, really important. What I want to pull on here is you referenced very briefly, you referenced basketball. I'm assuming you played on a team. Did you? Okay. So you talked about coaching, and you spoke about friends for life, and that you were actually talking about, I think, your Xerox time at that during that point of the conversation. But
Yeah.
it it really stood out to me because as you're talking through the whole thread of this conversation, Leo, I'm only hearing so much of the importance of connection with others, whether it's the open door at home or your teammates or your friends at Xerox, what have you. I would imagine that's fairly significant for you,
Yeah. Big time
relationships.
relationships.
And that would have been, I would imagine it started with your family life, right?
Yeah. There's no question. It started at 32 Wadsworth Avenue in Avon, New
Yeah.
York,
Yeah.
and it grew. And I won a wife lotto, and
Mm.
she's got the same values of her family, oldest of four in her case. And so here we are. I'll be married 48 years this year. I've got four
Congratulations.
amazing kids that are we have a blessed functional family. There's no
Yeah.
dysfunction. I have seven grandchildren as of this taping today with you
Oh,
to do this. So I look at pictures all around here. You'd be in my office. They're just filled with my family here. I just count my blessings every morning I walk in here
mm,
to live this. And even last night at dinner with these two retired executives from my number one client in the United States, they're both 58 range, right?
mhm.
I got them by 13 years, right? They're asking me like, when are you going to retire? And the one wife of one of the leaders, and I looked at her, I said, last breath.
Mhm.
And she like, what are you doing? We just moved to this location, or we're just building a new home. And why are you still working? And I said, because it's not work.
Because you want to.
I
Yeah,
said,
it's
there's
fun.
probably 10 to 25% that's work, where there's stuff you got to do as running a business.
Yeah.
And I said, some of those things sort of tire you out as you age. But I said, the far
Mm.
majority of my work, I
Hmm.
said, look I'm having dinner with you folks tonight. I never would have met you if it wasn't through my work. And I've
Exactly.
known, the people I was with last night for over a dozen years now. They'll be friends of mine for the rest of my life. They retired 2 years ago
Yeah.
and called me to want to have dinner with me. And I said, I don't know. Michelle, I just think that the big guy upstairs is infused me with a belief of wanting to help others to be their best.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
find,
I live that.
yeah. Yeah. That's, again, we can hear that. Something that's really, I'm curious about. So far, what we've talked about is teaching, coaching, relationships, values. And again, very earlier on, you touched on mastery, excellence, being your best, playing your best game. Tell us a little bit about that. Where did that come from, this desire to pursue mastery?
Well, boy,
Or to,
long learning. I'm sitting here in my home office here in Scottsdale, and I don't have my wallet in my back pocket. If I had my wallet in my back pocket, I would pull out a little inscription, and it's a quote from the late great John Wooden, who was the coach of UCLA's basketball program,
Mhm.
passed away many years ago. And I had the good fortune to speak to him once for a
Oh,
conversation,
nice.
and he had a success quote. And I'm looking at his book right here above
Mhm.
me, above my screen right now. And this quote read this, Michèle, says, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of I'm touching my heart here,
Mm.
self-satisfaction in knowing that you did your best to become the very best you are capable of becoming. As an 18-year-old leaving high school, I wrote that down before I went to St. Bonaventure because I said, I want to be the next John Wooden.
Love that.
And,
Yeah,
and,
and
and I had him sign that years later, Michèle. So his whole quest,
mm,
because he was a man of virtues and values himself, and the winningest career collegiate coach in the United States of NCAA basketball wins. But the way he modeled his life
yeah,
was part of it, mirrored my life of growing up with his respect for his mom and dad and things like this. So that is still in my wallet, Michèle.
yeah.
And on the back of it, you get a kick out of this. There's a dime, and it's taped on there.
Okay, I was going to say a real dime.
Real dime.
Real
And
dime.
and people and I say, why do you think I have a dime here? And I said, I wrote this and put this on as an 18-year-old in 1973. And when I talk to an audience, and they'll guess and they'll say, they'll throw out an answer. And I said, the answer is my old Sicilian mother said, don't ever leave the house unless you've got a dime in case you need to call me.
Oh, that's when you had a payphone worth 10 cents. I
We
remember
had
those payphones at
Remember,
10
there were
cents.
no cell phones in
What cell phone?
1973. There were payphones.
Payphones, they cost 10 cents.
And,
I remember
and
that.
my mom, Josephine Marie Pusateri, affectionately called Aunt Pep by all of our
Oh,
32 first cousins of mine, would said, make sure you have a dime in case you need to call. And I put that on the John Wooden quote. So my whole life has been living this mission statement, and it just took off, Michèle.
mm-hmm.
The 3-year career in the office products, the 9-year career in the sales consulting, sales training field, the 3-year career in the asset management firm. And in 1992, I was ready to launch Pusateri Consulting as a 37-year-old
Yeah,
with 3 kids. And it was like, well, as my wife said, what's the worst that could happen?
yeah.
And I looked affectionately and said, we sell the house and keep the kids.
There you go.
And I said, I'm real marketable right now. So
That's
I'm
beautiful.
marketable right now. I'm 37 and
Yeah,
get a job as a national sales leader, VP. I wasn't being arrogant in any way, Michèle,
no,
but
yeah.
I was at a
You,
point where you knew that, Leo, are you available? Would you ever consider this move or this move? Or there were things coming at me, and I said, no, I got to take the life jacket off. I was on the diving board, and one of my
mm,
friends and his dad pushed me. They were they were helpful in the cause of having me take the plunge. You know what, Michèle, and I knew at the time the curriculum wasn't completely focused back then, but I knew that I could help people learn the profession of selling and consulting. I knew from my work of wanting to be my best, I could help other people. It wasn't complete clarity.
Mm-hmm.
There was a degree of faith and
Mm-hmm.
trust that I would figure this out as my credit cards were mounting, and my wife would look at me like, "Are you sure you made the right decision?" I said,
Mm-hmm.
"This is it." In the first 2 or 3 years, works were tough and trying to figure it out, but I knew that there was going to be a course around where your competencies are today and helping people to differentiate their
Mm-hmm.
companies or distinguish themselves or their teams, or to understand what competing on value really means, and how to get on the same side of the table with a client or prospect, and how to
Mm-hmm.
elevate and be a good listener and ask the right questions and develop a confidence through trust and likability. I had all this stuff brewing, and it
Right. It
wasn't
was in
until
there.
I just, it was like when you jump in, you take the life jacket off, and it's like I didn't know if I was going to swim freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke. But I knew I wasn't going to drown.
I think that's true for most entrepreneurs. When you
Yeah,
set out, you've got a vision that's probably not really clear, but you've got a lot of faith and you just trust that you're going to figure it out. And very often the business you start with isn't necessarily the same business several years later. It has
yeah.
morphed and nuanced and pivoted a little bit. But you're realizing, as I think in the journey, as we have, as we see with our clients and ourselves, we see that our orientation and our skill set and the things that we are where we are most valuable really start to show up, which I want to. So how did you went from selling and consulting with a ton of experience in that, and being your best. So these were the core drivers that you communicated just now. How did you get to nuancing towards value and differentiation in your work?
Well, the whole concept of value is something I studied in those 9 years at Xerox Learning Systems. And way back in the late 70s, literally,
Yeah.
leadership through quality was coming into play. And the quality initiatives, quality
Mm-hmm.
circles,
Mm-hmm.
teams working together on improving quality issues within organizations. This was big, Japanese
Yep, it
influence,
was at that time.
lot of the core key leaders, the Druckers, the people leading the quality charges across the universe, and seeing clients, Xerox, Kodak, Corning,
Mm-hmm.
the ones I mentioned, employing quality initiatives. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what started to happen in the 80s was through the work and the sales consulting and sales training and all the programs I was exposed to, not just the ones I was representing, but there was a myriad, a
Mm-hmm.
plethora of great competitors that I was competing against for sales productivity assignments and consulting assignments. There are a lot of great firms out there, and to this day that you and I both run into, right? And what started to happen was that from the quality revolution, we started to shift into the value revolution. And there were a lot of writers that were starting to write books. Mac Hannon, one of my all-time favorites, competing on value himself. And
Mm-hmm.
I got every Mac Hannon book that he ever wrote. I give him a lot of credit. Winning the Value Revolution, Value
Mm-hmm.
Migration, by all these other authors. And they were all coming out, and the quality word was starting to be replaced
With
by the
value.
value word.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like, so what's going on? They started realizing there's a lot of clients out there. And if you look outside your boardrooms and your manufacturing plants, those clients are changing. They're
Yeah.
becoming more sophisticated. They're more informed. They've got competitive options. They're not swayed by marketing gimmickry. They've got all these things going on. So all these business writers, and I'm reading this stuff. I said, yeah, they are onto something. And I said, I love the direction because of my athletic background, the being your best, the quest of the wooden quote in my back pocket, reading all these phenomenal authors, reading about all the stuff around value and competing on those principles today. As I'm reading it, I'm with the money manager for 3 years and my clock is ticking. And I'm thinking, man, there is a way to integrate this. And I'm calling on all these advisors in North America trying to position our money management expertise as part of their diversification strategy to their clients.
You
And
had some
I'm
experience.
talking to these advisors, Michelle, and I'm realizing they're clueless, many of them. They were they were transitioning their business into a fee model. They were trying to learn to not be transactional, but to be consultative, how to sell from a brokerage dollars amount transactionally to selling a fee. They were selling it by hot dots and they were selling it wrong. And I'm talking to people in my travels, and as they're getting to know my background, they say, man, this guy Pusateri, not only does he know the business of managed accounts or wealth management, this guy really knows how to sell. He really knows. He taught at Xerox Learning for 9 years, and he's got this amazing background. Hey, Leo, could you come in and spend 5 minutes on your money management story? Could you spend the rest of the hour on teaching our advisors how to sell this correctly, how to defend their fees, how to distinguish themselves? And consequently, the light bulb went off, Michelle. And as I was talking to a couple of my clients, they were asking me to do some work for them outside of my trying to sell our managed account approach. And the light bulb started to go off for me. I said, you know what? This is really my calling. I can help these people. And I can help these people to learn how to do what you and I do, to differentiate, to distinguish, to compete differently, to win mandates, to elevate their confidence, their passion, their speed, to look me in the eyes, net it out. No, do it again. You ring the bell like I would blow the whistle. But I was ringing, blowing a whistle, Michelle. And to that point, so I created these whistles and stuff. So I went from, let's go, let's do this, get back together, to blowing it. I got a referee's whistle when I teach, and I'll say, okay, so tell me what makes you different.
Right.
And they'll do this, they'll hem, they'll haul, their eyes will leave, they'll do this and that. And I'll say, let's do it again. Ready? Try this time. Keep me your eyes, all the things that you and I both do, that we both love to do. And so it became not just value introspection, Michelle. It became the pursuit of excellence around articulation. With respect, living my values with respect, reiteration of your value, delivering it passionately, with confidence, with speed, meaning lack of hesitation when people ask you questions. So the training that I started to develop was helping people to be on their game, to go forward in their chairs, not backwards with these discussions, to learn how to listen, how to respond differently, and how to elevate their game at levels that they never even dreamed they could do.
There's a couple of things. Absolutely. Oh, and you can see it. You were living there. I remember those days as well. I remember that transition from quality into value. I remember that. And having myself worked in the financial services industry, seeing advisors who I would always think to myself, why are you selling that thing when you're so good at that thing? You're not positioning your best, your sweet spot. You're not positioning what you're good at, right? You're positioning what you think is going to sell, but it doesn't when you're not authentic. The other thing that is really coming up, though, is, one thing that I always say is being different isn't valuable. So be careful, right? It's how do I be different? How do I compete differently? I'm like, that's the wrong question. Yes, you want to be different. That's the end result. But the main thing is to understand what your unique value is and what makes you valuable. And that will also help you be different because of that approach. And what really stood out for me, and I'm curious about your take on this, is when I was helping people with their whole value proposition and trying to figure that piece out with them, I often helped. They were trying to sell transactionally, and as we talked about earlier, they're trying to sell transactionally. And what you're referring to, and of course what I do as well, selling on relationship and selling on value. And the one word, I know it's a big word for you, is real value, not artificial value, not superficial value, real value. I'd love to hear your take on that. When you say real value, what do you mean?
Well, I never say real. I say real.
Yeah, I've got to say that better. Volume goes up, real value.
And the volume does go up, quite honestly. It's like I'm leaving a school zone at 35 miles an hour or whatever, 15, 20 miles an hour. And that feeling when you're putting your foot on the accelerator, you're going on the expressway or a highway or something. And I said, everybody should have a value proposition, right? That's a given. and people, I can't even tell you over the years, I've got thousands of value propositions through our work in the last, 3 decades plus. And I mean, so many people would send it to me and they'd say, what do you think?
Mm.
I said, well, these are just words.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to complete the rest of my model to understand. So I really understand if this value proposition you wrote is truly unique.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people teach it as a value proposition. I've always taught it as a unique value proposition. And what in my methodology is taking people up a ride or climb up a ladder,
Mhm.
or value ladder, is like, well, okay, so let's draft the first version of this. Well, tell me why you do what you do. This
Right.
is what you're telling me you believe you do, your value prop. Tell me why. Tell me
Mhm.
why. What have you learned from working with people to help them achieve their wealth goals and their mandates? Okay.
How do you know when you ask that why question, how do you know that they're being um, not genuine, but being honest with themselves?
Their authenticity comes out to me. I can find it
Mhm.
in a couple seconds. Say,
Yeah.
do you really believe that?
Yeah.
Put it
I always say I look for
up.
the sparkle. I'm like,
Do you really
just
believe that? But I don't need your beliefs right now. I need to know what you've learned. See, the way I teach it differently than there's a lot of people that great authors that start with why and all that good stuff. And I love reading that too. And it has a place in my world as well. But I teach it differently.
Mhm.
And my why is it's developed through your insight, your wisdom,
Mhm. Mhm.
your philosophies, your experiences, what you've learned from your clients, what you know for certain that drives your beliefs that you know
Yeah,
for certain.
I
It's
agree.
not part of what makes you different, or
No.
I believe in integrity. Well, that's a good answer. I believe in it too. But it doesn't belong in my question 3 that supports your value prop.
Exactly.
It belongs in question 6 of what makes you different. So I
Mhm.
teach people the subtle differences between their business beliefs and their core values and elements of differentiation. So
Mhm.
tell me why, then tell me how. How am I going
Yeah.
to experience this? And every time we climb, Michelle, as you remember going through this years ago, I take the virtual screwdriver and I'm tightening up. Does this still make your proposition and it's this draft appropriate as you're adding on a
Mm.
business belief or two? When we add
Mhm.
process, and then we get into success stories.
Yeah.
And so I'm always linking things together. I actually have on my desk here, I keep this chain here, and I keep this as a visual metaphor, as a reminder. And I said, to get to real, because that was your
Mm.
question, right?
Mhm.
I said, the way I teach this is I'm not serving communion to you on the phone today, right? A virtual little communion exercise here of value. Who are you, right? Is the question. What do you do is the second question. And why do you do what you do? And I'm getting to that question that you asked me. How do you do this? How do I experience your value proposition? And who have you done this stuff for? Talk to me about your successes and the differences you started making. Tell me what makes that proposition different. And then lastly, tell me why I should really do business with you. What's the real
Mm.
value, right? And the real value in my methodology comes in the actualization of, I use this word, and a lot of people, I've got like 75 to 100 facilitators around North America right now that I've taught them how to teach my model in
Mhm.
their companies that they license this. And I said, real value, you have to prove to me anecdotally and more importantly, empirically,
Mhm.
that the proposition you said, that value proposition, which you thought was unique, did it actually happen? Did you actually do what you said you could do?
Mhm.
What you proposed you could do? Did your proposition become real?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. It's true.
Did it
Yeah.
actualize? You told me you could help me to improve my sales or cut my revenues down or help me to achieve my life goals, whatever. Did they really do it? Did they
Yeah.
accomplish it as a result of your partnership? If they did, then your value became real.
Real. Exactly. Oh, it's so interesting. I mean, you're more articulately gentle than I am. But in my mind, I'm always thinking to myself, okay, hotshot, prove it. That's kind of my back. I'm like,
Well, I've said,
interesting.
I've
Help me
said that,
understand.
Michelle, in a couple of different ways as well. Trust me. I pulled some people off to the side
Yeah.
and said,
Yeah.
"Who are you trying to kid here? This is
Yeah.
that, let you be honest with me right now.
Just be honest.
Yeah, just be open and honest. If you're trouble or you can't say this." You said a couple of other important things in the call earlier too. I love the concept professional mask. Some people
Mm.
can't take it off, Michelle.
Hmm.
That's why
Well, this is,
partly why I developed that behind me there.
it's so, you know what? It's a big part of my work because as you know, I do more one-to-one work as opposed to
Yeah,
group. And that is such a huge part of my work. 'Cause so
yeah,
often I hear things like, I can't say that, I'll lose clients. I can't do that, I'll lose my reputation. I can't whatever because I will lose whatever. There's always a risk and a fear of showing up with an authentic value proposition. And that's something I work with clients all the time on that is overcoming and having the courage
yeah.
to
Good for
step
you.
forward authentically. How do you deal with that with yours? Like how do you come across it? How do you see that? Because I see that almost every client. I see that every time.
Yeah, I use the word too, Michelle, emotional in front of courage.
Yeah.
That you need emotional courage to stand up for yourself. And it's like you
Mm,
said, you also said as well, and there's another word I would use is that some people just have a tough time being vulnerable. They've created this outer image with the mask on. And when you take the mask off, the real authentic person
right.
really needs to show, right? And you're doing your best to teach that as I am in my own way. And,
Yeah.
and so what I love to do is and what I've created is a continuation of my work that gets people to really be comfortably vulnerable
Yeah.
in the right group setting. And you used another expression as well, this or that. It's not this or that. It's not this or it's not that. It's you.
Yeah.
It's not this, it's not that. It's you.
It's you.
And that's
Exactly.
why one of my book titles called You Are the Value. It's not
You are.
this, not
Well,
that. It's you.
and you're touching on a really important piece here because, I think particularly in the work we do, because you are also dealing with services, I don't try to differentiate product. That is a totally different game. But differentiation in services is really only about the individual. It has nothing, it has so little to do with the product or the process and whatnot. Those validate and enable the value proposition to be stronger.
Right.
They're an important and critical part of it, but they're not the part of it, right? It's the person, you said 75 to 100 facilitators, right? And every single one of them is taking people through a process, but they're doing it in their own unique and authentic way. So their energy comes through and allows people to access that emotional connection to the content. It allows them to experience that content through the facilitator's energy, right?
Yeah, so much so.
It's
I
so
was,
important.
I
And
always
people, I
tell,
think, a
yeah,
lot of times don't understand. Like, I don't think people differentiate between services and products very often in terms of how they're differentiating. Particularly, and I've worked with a lot of clients who've worked with different people to help them with their marketing, their branding, and whatnot. And so much of it is falling short of highlighting the individual. So
yeah.
much of it falls short of that. And yeah, that's what I'm so passionate about. It's, oh my gosh,
Well,
people are
so
so
much of my
beautiful.
work, so much of my work today, Michelle, is in the C-suite of major global wealth management
Hmm.
brands,
Hmm.
where they, quite honestly, even to this day, because of mergers, acquisitions, private equity, all the stuff that's going on today,
Yeah,
right? There needs to be a revisitation to an organizational story or
yeah,
their culture,
yeah,
their standards, and what happens is through additions, and we're gonna pick up this franchise or this branch or acquire this group or whatever. And I use this with one of my clients in California. I says, what you're creating is institutional pollution.
mm,
Is that you brought in all these other voices from 5, 6, 10 other
yeah,
people, and they've been taught this way, this way, this way, that way, but they don't know your way. You
right,
don't even have a common way. You got people from this
exactly.
city to that city, and they're saying, tell me about your company, and they're getting a
Yeah,
different answer every time they open up their
yeah,
mouth
exactly.
because of their past training,
Hmm.
whatever. You yourselves, as a leadership team, need to define what makes your story clear, compelling, memorable, something that somebody will say, tell me more. And it needs
Right.
to start in your boardroom, like quality initiatives did in the day. It needs to start with you and to filter it down to that person that's literally representing your brand to an individual or a family or to a
Yeah.
center of influence on the street.
Yeah.
And we got to protect their entrepreneurial spirit, but we got to give them the messaging that consistently around your company is being delivered with that clarity and that confidence and that passion in ways that you never thought about before. So a lot of
Exactly.
my work flows like that.
I love it. You're no, you know what? I'm thinking the same thing. It's in when we're dealing more with one-to-one clients or the individual advisors or smaller firms that are delivering, they're more influenced, not necessarily from a merger or an acquisition, but they're more influenced by their clients' voices. Right? Clients come to them and say, "This is what I want," or "This is how I think it should look," because the clients have got ideas about how they might expect a service to be delivered. And again, an advisor
Right.
will not want to lose that client or not want to lose the opportunity, and so they will tend to pivot, compromise, change their offer a little bit, adjust, and they don't understand the impact of when that pivot isn't serving and setting them up for success to deliver their greatest value in the best possible way. So it's the same thing. And we see this all the time, as do you, right? You see it everywhere where people are so, the temptation is so fierce, right? It's so fierce to say, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. And then you hang up the phone or you leave the boardroom, then you turn around and say, okay, everybody, new direction. We're doing this for this particular client,
Yeah.
for this particular initiative. And that's where things start to diminish or deplete the value or the real value of the value proposition,
You
right?
got it. There you got it. Got it.
So it's just fascinating to me how this journey is so rich for people. Okay, so let's move from here. I want to move into this next part of your journey now. You've got in the sign behind you the sabbatical X. So you're developing a new program, and that really is a more robust, my understanding, it's a more robust exploration of life with your clients. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, it started off as the sabbatical project, and I rebranded it about 3 years ago to support the title of the book
Oh,
I
right.
wrote. I wrote a book
Sorry.
called Your Next Big Project Is You.
Okay.
So we've rebranded that as the Project You Experience. And it came about as I wrote my first book in 2002, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, Am I the Most Valued of Them All? As I was rolling this out around North America at the time, before I had some assignments in Europe and Asia, and people would come up to me during a break. They said, Leo, you're really making me think, this value introspection and articulation. You're opening up the zipper on my chest. You're reaching in,
Mm.
you're touching my heart and soul, as I would tell them. I said, you need to give me permission to do that in my facilitative way today, because I'm going to rip you apart in a nice way. And you got to know that my tone is going to be
Mm.
unbelievably respectful. It's done, though, in a spirit of wanting you to just be much better than you came into this program and leaving here more on your game than you ever thought of what you could do. And so we're going through these elements of the value ladder, right? Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do what you do? Like the first three steps. And they're breaking with me and they're saying, Leo, you're making me think, they're taking their mask off now.
Yes.
So
Right.
you're making me think beyond just being a financial advisor at XYZ wealth management firm or financial services firm. You're making me think, you know what? I'm a father, or I'm a mother, or I'm a husband, I'm
Mhm.
a wife. There's other roles that I play. I'm not just doing
Yeah.
this in my business life. I put kids on the bus, or I'm coming home and teaching or coaching soccer practice or hockey practice or whatever. There's much more to my life. And as I'm doing my work and helping other people, I'm dealing with people that are at different stages of their life. I'm helping to do retirement planning and thinking about their futures and things. And I'm living this myself. And so the whole issues of the next chapter in your life, or the next second mountain, or for our hockey fans, the third period, or football fans, the fourth quarter. There's so many ways the next chapter. I've heard
Yeah.
many people describe it. And to me, I said, is you're dealing, and I was living this as well, Michèle, getting older, losing then my mom after my
Mm.
dad, my only
Mhm.
brother, in-laws, living in assisted care facilities, going to intensive care with mom and my brother and stuff, and going back to repeat the cycle, getting cancer myself, which got it early, got it through, emergency landing on a flight. Your whole life, you start dealing now about your future, longevity, health, all the things attending to all of us in the future. And I said, people never had a chance to take a sabbatical. They never had a chance to think about that next chapter or what's next for them. And the principles that I taught or I came up with seamlessly came out of my mouth, no different than who, what, why, how, who, what, why in my value introspective process of discovering your value. I said, what are people, what am I going through? You want to live a life of significance. You want to live a life with no regrets. You want to live a life with abundance. You want to live a life with gratitude. You want to live a life with perspective. You want to live a life with being the best in all the roles you play. And you want to live your legacy, not just leave it. So I went to work on these 7 principles, and it became originally sabbatical, transcended into the Project You experience. That is the capstone of my life. When I'm with these former clients, much younger than me last night, and like they said, what's your exit strategy? When are you retiring? I said, last breath, because I can teach this. Yeah. I can continue, as long as the big guy upstairs can let me to write, keep my voice, to coach and mentor the youth, to help to make a difference in ways that I want to. Why would I want to stop that? And a lot of it is because of the work of this program in the lives that we're changing right now. And I'm seeing it and I'm feeling it. And when you get people, Michèle, when you can create an aura of just being in a cohort, breaking down taking the mask off, completely vulnerable because of the way it's facilitated, and getting people to talk literally at the dinner table last night. So now that you've retired, who's living a life of significance now that you had a separation from your corporate responsibilities? How are you seeing life differently now? What are those characteristics? Do they resonate with you differently now that you left the corporate world? What are the things that are on your bucket list, or things that you want to do or don't want to do anymore going forward? What are things that you really care about that you want to do this? How are you going to use your time, your talent, your treasure going forward? What's your perspective on the world now, and how you're coaching and training your kids and grandkids and elevating through being a role model and challenging them to be the best person, even as a 10-year-old grandchild or my 42-year-old daughter? Right. To get them thinking, if I model it in myself, but being, like my responsibility is to, as a father, is to even show my son what it's like to be a good husband, or to my children or my kids of how to treat my wife, or to there's things that come into play as we get older, right? Yeah, I don't want to give that up.
It's interesting. I think, you're making a really good point. And yes, as we get older, I think that does definitely, it's more emphasized. I've always been curious about it from my perspective. When I think about younger people, and your phrase was live your legacy, which I just gave me goosebumps when I heard that, live your legacy. And I often think to myself in this conversation, but also many, many times in the past, I've wondered, why can't we start living our life, or why don't we start living our legacy earlier? Why don't we live it when we're 20 or 30 or 40? Why do we have to start? Why do people start so late? And I think, to your point, as we get older, our mortality gets a little closer, becomes more sort of closer to the end of our nose, so to speak. And yet everything we've talked about today is really about living your legacy. Everything, doesn't matter how old you are. You're living.
I wish you were at dinner last night, because that's exactly what we morphed into our conversation. Who's the ideal client for teaching living your legacy? And we had a debate, and one of the gentlemen who'd retired, and he said, I think you need to have enough experience in your life and in your career to be able to be reflective, but also to be looking forward. I said, yeah, I get it. And I said, would you want, though, your children to learn about significance and abundance and the principles of my program earlier than later? And just understand that the application or the discussion points are different for a 10-year-old granddaughter or a 30-year-old son, or
I mean,
A
it doesn't.
55-year, 30-year representative of a company.
Yeah, I don't think it changes. I actually think, I mean, I think the context changes. Sure, a 10-year-old, to your client's point last night, not enough experience, not enough wisdom, not enough life behind them, maybe not enough sense of mortality. And sure, that's one lens, but a 10-year-old has 10 years of life experience and 10 years of their journey and 10 years that they can reflect on, and they can look forward with dreams and vision and impact of what they want their legacy to be. I mean, whether they want to be a fireman or a teacher at 10 years old, which, I want to, they have different visions. So I think it's really based on, I think if often when we use the word legacy, from my perspective, it seems like it's that thing that we think about in that final chapter, right? In that last chapter, last quarter of the game. And I think that's a shame, because I think we can build a legacy from the very beginning. And I think that's something that certainly from our perspective in our family, we're always thinking about the next generation, and that is our legacy. And that starts with us in day one, as soon as our children are born, so to speak. But then you go into the 7 generations of other populations, where they think of other cultures, where they think of 7 generations out. They don't think of 1, they think of 7. I'm like, that's living legacy. So I think there's always context that we can bring to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
fascinating. Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
so much excitement. I know we're coming up on time here. And Leo, I think we could go on for hours, but
We can.
given
We
where we're
can.
at,
We
right?
could. We can and we could.
We could. Okay, so given the conversation that we've had today, what would you like to leave our listeners with? Is there a final nugget, a final piece of wisdom that you might like to capture to anchor what we've talked about today?
I guess I would pull out the quote in my pocket around
Mm,
doing your best to be your best. And just to think every day about what you can do, the little things in life that most people don't think about.
yeah.
Just the little subtleties of being a good person, living your life with your core values, as I
Hmm.
look to do with mine. And it might be the subtleties of opening a door, or looking someone in the eye
Yeah.
and saying thank you, or that meant a lot, or writing a note to somebody and saying, I just
Right.
want to let you know how this impacted me, what you
Hmm.
said to me, or the direction you gave me. It really made a difference. And I collect all those. So when we talk again, when I'm back in beautiful Buffalo, my other office, and I have a box, literally it's about so big, so high, and I wrote on it, priceless.
Hmm.
And there I've accumulated all of these personal notes for my whole career. And I showed a couple of my kids this, and I said,
Oh, wow.
I just someday I want you to really understand this, that when your kids, my grandkids, ask, what did Poppy do? And maybe you could pull one of these out and read one of the impact of our work and trying to be a good person to help other people to be good people as well. Show
The-
people that you care, and do your best to make a difference in someone's life if you can today. And what little way or big way possible. That
You
would be
never
my
know.
comment.
Yeah, you never know. It might feel small to you, but it can be massive to someone else.
Yeah,
Yeah, you never
yeah,
know. Thank you for that. One of the, bringing back that quote, I appreciate that you brought back that quote, because the one thing that really stood out for me in that quote was the word peace,
yeah.
because that was in it, right? The
Peace of mind,
peace of
which is a
mind,
direct
knowing,
result,
yeah,
of self-satisfaction, knowing you did your best
yeah,
to become the very best you are capable of becoming. So when
gorgeous.
people ask me that, I said, at 18 years old, I wrote a mission statement. It was triggered, and it was anchored by Coach Wooden's
Yeah.
success philosophy and his creed, or his key words around this.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I live that to my day.
Mm-hmm.
Today,
Mm-hmm.
I built a business as
Mm-hmm.
a mission to help other people to go through self-introspection, my value ladder that the 7 questions.
Yeah.
Then it evolved to new levels of thinking, of an 8th question,
Yeah.
of how much does all this cost, to an whole consultative selling skills of how to teach, how to talk to people, how to be prepared, how to speak respectfully, how to be on
Yeah.
your game, the questions they ask, and then to culminate it with, let's be the best person we possibly could be and help other people on that journey to be the best possible people they can be.
Mm-hmm.
So
Love
it's a
it.
fulfilled life. Who knows? Maybe something else will hit me. But right now, Michèle, I get up and count my blessings that I get to meet people like you
Mm,
that are so committed as I am in your cause of helping people to be their best in your own way through your skills and
mhm.
expertise in the value you are imparting to them to, in essence, take their mask off, to find their authenticity, to challenge them to be vulnerable, to move forward in their chair. We're both doing it in different, maybe some overlapping
Similar,
ways.
yes, and different
And that's the
styles.
beauty of being in
Yeah,
one of the core elements of my program is
exactly.
instead of being competitively threatened by that, it's being abundant and me. I want to learn how you're doing it or sharing. Here's what I've learned because the universe is big enough for both of us. I can promise you that.
Exactly. I love that. The universe is big enough for everybody to show
Yes.
up in their authentic way. Gorgeous. Leo, thank you for today. Where might people find you if they're looking to get to follow you, to learn more about you?
Pusateri Consulting and Training. Google us. That's our website.
Okay,
Contact information on there as well. You can
great.
see where we've got, I'm proud to say, you can see the work and the writings and from our
Okay,
books and white papers and things like that. And I'm
super.
always, I think part of this in terms of me answering the question last breath, some of my friends that have been in the business said, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
I love meeting. I didn't know you until what, the last 30 days.
Yeah.
And I love the process in my life that affords
Uh-huh.
me the gift of meeting folks like you, Michèle, every
Exactly.
day.
Likewise.
Why would I want to give
Why
that
would
up?
I give that up? Exactly. Well, that's partly why I'm doing this podcast. It's to meet fantastic people like you as well. It gives us, an opportunity to connect in a way that we may not have otherwise. So
Yeah, that's
lovely.
it. God bless.
Absolutely
Thank you so much
wonderful.
for your time today. I appreciate you
I
having me as a
appreciate you
guest.
as
This was
well.
a privilege to be part of your podcast.
A privilege to have you. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you so
Thank,
much. Thank you.
thank you. Bye for now.